Welcome to episode, hopefully, 111 of the XrmToolCast. I say hopefully because we did record an episode at MVP Summit at the Microsoft recording studio, and we are yet to get the audio and video back from that. So if we don't get it back, this may be episode 110. Hopefully it will be episode 111. In this episode, Scott and I speak with Ulrikke Akerbæk, an MVP, about Power Pages. She co-hosts the Power Platform Boost podcast with Nick Dolman, and we just spent a great time talking to her about all things Power Pages. So if you're interested in learning about Power Pages, learning about some of the ways that she's learned it and shares it, then sit back and relax and enjoy this episode because it's definitely for you. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XrmToolCast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and Scotty, I have all the codes to row. Scott, how's it going?
I'm very good, thanks. Now, not all the codes, because like your session at Canadian Power Platform Summit was all your base R belonged to us. So
yes,
you own
but that was coding codes. I'm talking about discount codes.
Yeah. Do you want me to do that now? I thought that was at the
end.
Well,
it's foreshadowing. We need to introduce it so that way they listen to the end.
Oh, it's like, so this is like your kind of this hook, just leading people in. Hey, and everyone listen, stay until the end because we have an exciting announcement that you don't want to miss. Yeah, I see what that's. Yeah, I see what you're doing there. That's good.
So gotta get our YouTube viewership up. And hey, I did run into a listener.
Really? One of them?
At the Canadian Power Platform. Yes, I ran into our one, actually. We actually have 800 subscribers on YouTube. I didn't even notice that. It's like, wow, that's a lot.
That's impressive. So what did they say then? Do you remember their name or?
Yes, I didn't give him a shout out. I just didn't go. Okay. His name was Alejandro. So shout out to Alejandro. Great meeting you. And
thanks for listening,
kind of a newer dev, and he was eating up what I was spooning out. I'm like, yep, this is basically 10 years of my experience trying to bequeath it to everybody I can. So enjoy. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it was it was great to hear all of the feedback from Canadian Power Platform Summit. It was such a buzz. Some people came from all over the place. I felt as though we were sort of this amazingly massive event. We had people flying in from all over the world. We had people coming in from New Zealand, and well, actually, it was just people coming in from the MVP Summit. So they're really just driving 2 hours north or getting the train or trains, planes and automobiles. And we had some people coming from as far as Norway as well.
Norway, yes. That sounds like someone that we would like to have on our podcast even.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's an introduction to our guest. So our guest today is none other than Ulrikke Akerbæk. Akerbæk? How do I do that? Did I right? Akerbæk. So there's the Achenbach that goes to my kid's school, and I had to make sure I wasn't saying Akerbæk. That's the best I can do. So hopefully.
And I know you have the habit of listening to the LinkedIn recording things. So I know you've done that for other guests. So I was really curious to see how you do, and you did well, Daryl, I must say.
Okay, good. Okay, I gotta read your intro.
Don't do it, Daryl. You can do it. You can do it.
She is a Power Platform practice lead at Fredrikstad, co-host of Power Platform Boost podcast, and the Microsoft Business Applications MVP. Welcome to the show, Ulrikke. There we go. Now we can
Thank you
give
so
the
much for
official
having me, Daryl and Scott. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been wanting to be on your podcast for forever, so this is really an honor.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it is one of the staple podcasts you have to be on if you're anyone in this community. You have to be on this podcast.
And we had the other half of your podcast on as well, and so now we get.
Yeah, we're just collecting the podcast hosts. This is what it is. So, so welcome, Ulrikke. It's great to have you here because we can just check that off now. It's like trading cards, So we've now got the Boost set, which is worth more in a set. So.
Yeah, there you go. You've collected. Now we can check off and we can go to do other things. Done. Nice to see you.
That's it, really. Okay. That's it. The end of the podcast.
Promo code time. Whoop, whoop. No,
well, of course, you're very, very, very famous for Power Pages, and yourself and Nick Dolman, you both put out amazing content for Power Pages, and in fact, your session at Canadian Power Platform Summit was on Power Pages. So maybe you can sort of give listeners a bit of a background on, how you got to where you are today and what your session was about at Canadian Power Platform Summit in Vancouver.
Yeah, thank you. So I started developing with Power Pages when Microsoft bought it, actually, back in 2016, I think it was. I used to do SharePoint branding and SharePoint intranets with custom master pages and all these crazy web parts and all of that. Went on maternity leave, came back, they pushed SharePoint to the cloud. No one's doing that anymore. Just really looked at the platform and was thinking, what else could I do? What could I pick up? What can I apply my skills to? And Microsoft just bought ADX Studio, which we now know as Power Pages. And I'm a web developer by training and education, so that fit right into my tool set. And so I started doing that. And you know what? Being young and fearless, I pitched this as a fantastic new thing for a customer, a big Norwegian customer, just 6 months after it was bought. And it was Dynamics 365 portals back then. And said, yes, this is the solution to all your problems, basically. And they bought it. And so I was stuck in that project for over 4 years. A massive learning curve. Each month, basically going, well, wait, I'm sure this is coming. I have seen it somewhere in the release notes. Please, can we just wait? But yeah, and because there was no blog posts at that time, there was nothing, no YouTube, no one was doing Power Pages really, except for ADX Studio people. So it wasn't really a lot of community content to be found. So I really had no one to rely on for help when I was stuck, and I was stuck a lot. So whenever I would find a solution to my problem or someone help me, I write a blog post about it, purely for my own sake, really, just to let the next time I come across that problem, because I have a goldfish memory, I could just Google myself and I find it. And suddenly other people started commenting on my blog post, and the rest is history. Really, I've been doing that for the last 7 years or something. And so that's my introduction into this. And so I'm not a Dynamics developer. I know next to nothing about security and governance, and that's not my cup of tea. Still, the security role settings in Dynamics scares the bejesus out of me. Just that whole matrix. They have to tick all the things that with the green thing that goes.
Yeah.
It's to me that's scary. But I'm learning every single day.
So did you know in that UI? Did you know in the UI, if you wanted to select the whole row, you can just click the name and it will check the whole row? Did you know that?
No, you tell me.
Yeah.
Yes, it'll check it. Yeah, you can check it multiple times. Like if you accidentally select a couple, you want to clear them all, you just click it 4 times. It'll go through all the stages and clear it. So yes, it's not very obvious in the UI, and I know that you hate being in it. So I figured I'd give you some help, so that way you would spend less time in it if you hate being.
You've just done the same actions that everybody does when they discover that. Like when I discovered that, it was exactly this. It's like, why didn't I know about this before? And then of course, like the next day, it's like, oh well, of course I've always known this.
I'm so glad this is not recorded so that everyone will know that I never knew this. Yes. It's perfect. Yes. Yeah, good things.
You were today.
But I just had the same experience on the Power Pages side with someone on my team, because we do work with a big Norwegian customer at the moment. I have a team of juniors with me, and they were stuck in something for ages and ages. And then, of course, it was a small little thing in a fetch somewhere, or just a box they didn't tick. And they're looking at me like, I spent the week doing this. And then, okay, 2 things. First of all, you asked me day 1, not after it's been a week. And second of all, this is just stuff that you pick up along the way. No one really teaches you this. You have to bang your head against the wall for a number of hours or days, and then suddenly you discover these things, and then you know them, and then you move on. I wish that I would have accumulated on a blog post somewhere all the little things like you just taught me, all those small little details that I've learned along the way that I've forgotten that I learned.
Yeah. You were mentioning earlier about having that, your podcast, or not podcasts, you blog so you remember it later, right? So you can go back to it. And I had that this week even. There was some MVPs that posted like, what does this mean? And then they posted my blog, article I had like 7 years ago. So, oh yeah, I forgot I wrote that. What did I write? Oh yeah, like I completely forgot like what it was, how it worked. Like, oh yeah, good thing I wrote that down because I totally forgot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's actually, so Nick and I are doing a session at EPPC in June as well. And that is top 10 tips and tricks for Power Pages. And that is a 10 of the biggest things that we wish we'd known up front. So it's still, we've done that session a couple of times, and we're always evolving it because we always learn new stuff. There's always new things coming. So, and I've seen Dr. Flo as well, one of his sessions that he's presented 20 times, I think. It was a huge deck, a PowerPoint deck with all the things that, he's accumulated over the years of small tips and tricks you need to know. I love those sessions. I learn so much.
Well, it's funny how when you gather all of those tips and tricks, I mean, people ask you, how do you know all of this stuff? How do you learn this? That's questions people ask, right? And then there is no easy answer to it. It's not like there's one place that you can go. Like, it is just simply you have to hit your head against it over and over and again and go, I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to have to go and find the answer. And in the process of finding the answer, you find answers to questions you didn't even know you had as well. And that's that kind of exploration process. So it's kind of, I love hearing when you were saying when you were using Power Pages, well, of course, ADX Studio back then for the first time, and you having to explore it and thinking, oh, maybe there's some features coming out there. When you first started using it, what was how did you feel like it compared against SharePoint? I'm intrigued about coming from such a mature product as SharePoint, because SharePoint was so well established, gone through so many iterations over the years, then suddenly moving into a product which was evolving quickly. So how did you feel back then compared to how do you feel now? Because SharePoint gets a lot of bashing in the database, certainly in the database community, right? Everyone's like, oh, you need a real database, not like SharePoint. But I mean, how do you feel like it was then versus how do you feel they compare today?
Well, the whole tech stack is different because it used to be on-prem, and we used to get a new version. We installed it, we patched, we migrated data. It was a completely different beast, really. So when it moved to the cloud, I haven't really been with the product ever since then, because it transitioned over to the Power Platform, and which is evolving every week. So of course, and now SharePoint and Teams is evolving every week as well. So they are still kind of playing catch up just as much as we do, and it has evolved immensely, but so has Power Platform. So when we started with ADX Studio back then, it was so huge and much bigger than it is now. I would argue we had more templates, more complex templates. For instance, the governance template, and no one really remembers anymore. That went away when Microsoft bought ADX Studio, and so look at the designer that we have now on Power Pages. That I would argue, and this is just my take on it, that 50% of all the things you can do with Power Pages is still hidden in the Power Pages management app. You can't do that through the designer. And we gave that feedback to Microsoft as well, that if you want this designer to mean business, you have to transition everything from the model-driven app, everything that we can do there, because there's so much hidden potential in that product that you don't see or don't get to through the designer. And so when I started, I had just the documentation really to go by. As I would read the documentation, and I would look and experiment in the product. So I know the ins and outs of Power Pages because I had to find solutions to real life problems or issues or requirements that my customer had. So I really know how to stretch that to its limits. And that is what I blogged about. So you look at my blog posts, they're all really detailed blog posts about how to solve really niche things. That's merely just because I spent hours and hours just trying things out. And also using the support. Microsoft support's been awesome for me. I use them so much because they'll show me workarounds and nibbits that they don't really want you to see. But being on calls with them, and they share their screen, and then they take this GUID and they put it in that URL, and then they push that button and they click that thing, and they don't think that you're looking. And I'm recording, I'm writing as fast as I can, taking screenshots, so that the next time I know, then I'll do that.
And so they're not even willingly giving it to you. You're just kind of like, you're sneakily watching and stealing it. And so like, oh, no, I can do this myself.
I have OneNotes and OneNotes with screenshots from kind of sessions like that. Yes.
Well, it's great to hear this.
You got to be crafty. Oh yeah, support's been awesome.
So many people go, oh, I don't like going through the support. But it's like you say, there's so many opportunities to learn things that you just don't know. And yeah, I've always had that same good experience with support. So do you think the product's moving in the direction? I mean, you say you're kind of giving Microsoft that feedback. Do you think it's moving in the direction where it will have the same level of sophistication from a content management perspective as something like WordPress? So I've said the W word.
It's completely mine. I hope so, because that's what you're benching against, really. And I know that they say that from a marketing perspective, Microsoft's saying that we don't compete with them, but we are, because that's what people are used to. So it's kind of the same thing as if you want to make an app for anyone, then it has to be as good as the things that they want to use. You can't simply say that no, this is a business application, so therefore you have to be content with a poor interface. Well, yeah, you can do that, but no one's going to use it, because they do have all the fancy apps on their phone in their private lives. They're not going to use some clunky old thing on the as a business app if they don't have to. So we are benching against the best, whether we like it or not. So, and that perspective, I think they need to move in that direction. And I'm still looking for signs that that's coming. For instance, making blogs or blogging or news articles easier and more accessible, and making that into a better experience. Now, what we are doing is we are making that experience ourselves, right? So when we make portals that have that requirement, we would make an admin side to the portal where admins or editors or web, they would log in, the content creators, and they would create a new blog post or article in the Power Pages external interface, and then we would just save that to database and use that as a kind of a shadow CMS, if you want. And that goes back to when I was younger, when I was in school. That was all that we did. PHP, CSS, HTML, making CMSs for everything, making small social communities, and that's what we did. So it feels really familiar to do that.
Well, I've always said that I think Power Pages and ADX Studios is actually the most pro code product in the Power Platform, because, as you say, you have to know HTML and CSS at the minimum, really, to get the level of sophistication out to create complex sites. And you really need to know how to use JavaScript as well in order to do a lot of the things. So, and there's no other product like that. It's not what's Power Apps is not like that. Certainly model driven and Canvas apps is not like that. So would you disagree, or would you agree with me on the fact that it's the most pro code?
I wouldn't disagree on you on anything, Scott. I think that's one of my guiding principles.
Ooh, wow.
Wow, what? See,
if you say so, then
he has a bridge he wants to sell you.
I heard something about a promo code. I'll do whatever you say. Now, to be fair, I do agree with you. It's very pro code. And in fact, in the project that we're on right now with the Red Cross, we have one of the guiding principles is that we will do anything low code first, meaning if I need to build an interface, I'll build it with the low code tools that are out of the box first, and then the product owner will look at it and test it, and it will see if he's satisfied with it or not, and maybe we'll have to go a more custom route. Now, from the out of the box list or form or any of the other components, it's not the either or. There's such a gray area from the low code over to the pro code side that you don't have to switch. You start with the out of the box form, you add your JavaScript, which is often very well documented. There's a lot of community content around it. So it feels almost like it's low code, no code, just to grab JavaScript and add it to your form, and then it validates your input, for instance. To me, that's not pro code, that's simply low code. So, and then there are stages you can take in order to bring more code into your form. But I have a React developer on my team, and we are struggling. We're having this conversation every week because he wants to build this form with React. He wants to build this from scratch with pro code. And I say, well, what kind of implications does that have down the line when the owner of the product really wants to be able to maintain this, not having to build anything in Visual Studio and not having to know their way around GitHub or anything. They just want to see the code in the product, on the page, in the custom JavaScript field, and edit it from there, or the Visual Studio in code in the browser. So it is a balance for sure. And I do think that if you're going to use Power Pages, you have to know web development. That is kind of the first step. And if that means you have to be a pro coder, then sure. But I've heard that PHP is not really a programming language. So what do I know?
Do you have some hate in the comments now?
Yes.
Do you have a comment? What do you think about
this, like degrading yourself and your talents and abilities? I'm not a coder. I know PHP. That's not a coding language. Like, it's just as much a language as JavaScript is. Like, I mean, JavaScript is low code. You just copy and paste. Like, people struggle with even that. I mean, getting the right code to copy and paste. I mean, that takes some skill and talent. It takes some expertise.
Like me and PowerFX.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah. Is it harder for you to understand PowerFX than JavaScript?
Yes, definitely. I think for me, the problem that I have with PowerFX is that it's the other way around. My mind works from top to bottom. That's JavaScript, right? And then this is from the inside out. And my mind doesn't really work like that. I don't have the mental patterns for it. Every time I go into a Canvas app, I have to Google some Scott's videos and have to pause and play and write everything. That's how I do it. I've done that for weeks and weeks.
Well, it's funny because I've heard that from so many people, so many programmers who say, I've been doing this imperative programming for so long. Like you say, top to bottom, that's exactly what it is, right? You start with what you want to do, and then you move to the next thing, and then you do the next thing, and that's imperative. But the declarative style is, it is a mindset shift. But you can use Excel, right? No, right. Well, let's move on.
Actually, I was just talking with one of my colleagues the other day about Excel, because I know that I have ways and ways to go with Excel. I can barely get it to sum to, 2 cells. I have to look it up every time I do it. And I think it's the same thing, because my mind doesn't work like that. It's just, I haven't applied myself to learn it properly. So then I'm just using it like a fifth grader or something. And then, that's what I get. I think that goes for AI as well. AI is powerful. Chatbots and chat and co-pilots, everything is powerful if you know how to prompt it properly. I have so many people asking me, have you really started using it? Because I feel like it's just beep. And then I say, well, if you're feeding it beep, then that's what you're going to get. You need to learn how to prompt properly. And then it will work wonders for you. And in my experience, that's what's lacking when people are hating on AI and these chatbots, is that they don't really know how to ask it to do the jobs for them. But if you know how to, then it will, and it will do an excellent job at it.
Yeah, I was having that same exact issue with getting AI to document my code, right? On the project I'm on, it requires it to be commented. Every public method needs a comment. Like, that's really dumb in my opinion, but okay, whatever. And I kept on wanting my GitHub Copilot to auto document. I couldn't figure out what were the words that document everything in this method. Document that. I couldn't get it to do it until finally at Summit, I was sitting there and they said, you need to use a /doc, and then it'll know, oh, you want to document something. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And so it's like /doc file, boom, done. I'm like, why didn't I know this before? And that's the part that I think people, I think we've mentioned before, but it's the part that it's just a tool. It's a very smart tool, but it's limited in the user of the tool. It's not going to, if you're not using it, you're not being smart in how you're using it, you're going to get crap back, right? And just like in Googling, like if you type in some horrible search result for what you want, and you get 5 million searches, you won't find what you're looking for. You got to realize, how do I get this better? Like, how do I remove VS Code searches from my Visual Studio searches? Like, even that kind of stuff, you have to figure out how to know how to do and to use that tool. And so that's the same thing with the AI. It's like, you've got to understand how to use that tool. And the people that are like, oh, this is horrible, I think aren't spending the time to figure it out. Now, there's things about it that you could definitely say it struggles with this. And yes, it does. And yes, it's not the solution to everything. It can't, what is it? It can't count the number of N's and enter. Is that what it is, Scott?
Yeah, that was one of my examples. Yeah. And so, because we've got Copilot in Power Pages. So, and you were saying about knowing the right prompt to use. Have you found any prompts that work well in Power Pages that you can kind of tell our listeners, say, hey, this works, maybe don't use this, or any tips there? For those of you who are listening without YouTube, Rick is making this kind of pained look on her face.
No, actually, I am fully on board with Copilots. I know that that's how we're going to work in the future, and if we don't use it now, it will never get better. So that's where I'm coming from. But at the moment, and I've said this publicly before, it is a toddler, and it's making a mess, and it's not doing anything right. But it makes an attempt, right? So, and if I don't use it, it won't get better. So I am using it when I have time and patience, let's put it like that. And I want it to be better. And I know that that's the way to go, but I'm not in dev or production or anything remotely like that. It is in a sandbox just to see what it does. Maybe it thinks of something that I haven't thought about. Maybe it's creating something that I can use in my dev environment afterwards, but never straight in there. And that has more to do with naming conventions and the way that we work in our project and established truths that we have in our project that it doesn't know about. And hence it makes crazy things and it doesn't conform to our standards. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And then I said this in my session at CCBS, or Canadian Power Platform Summit, was about how to style Power Pages. And I'm joining Victor Dantas, one of your not presenters, but one of the other people that we're arranging Canadian Power Platform Summit, Victor Dantas. He's doing a 0 to hero thing for Power Pages. And one of my sessions is how to use AI to help you style Power Pages. And so I really have to look deep into applying myself to get those skills ramped up for that. And I did show some of the things that you can do with Copilot with Power Pages at the at my session at CPBS as well. But it is not the solution at the moment for what you need to do. Now, what I will say is that in my project currently, I'm developing a custom interface. You're adding a membership and you can add your family members to that membership. So you need multiple forms on a page where you can put in their details. And I'm making that purely with JavaScript on a Power Pages site. And so I'm sitting with Copilot on one screen and my code in Visual Studio code in the browser on one screen. And I'm using Copilot to teach myself how to do this because I'm not really that good. Vanilla JavaScript's not really something I've done a lot with. I've used jQuery a lot. So I really want to learn how would you actually do this from scratch. And I'm using it to teach me how to do it. And I'm always validating with my React developer on the side going, is this smart? Is this the way you would do it? And it says, well, it's actually really good. It's up to date and it's doing it the right way. So yes, this is actually valid. So in that respect, I am using AI and ChatGPT when I develop. So do you do a lot? Sorry.
Yeah, I was saying that's the thing, isn't it? If you don't use it, you can't then learn how to use it. I mean, that's ultimately it's a learning exercise from the users rather than the tool learning how you work. It's you have to learn how it works and how to get the most out of it. So yeah, it's interesting you saying about it being a toddler. Because it is a toddler and it isn't a toddler, right? Because it's like a toddler with like tons and tons of knowledge. So it's like trying to persuading it to tell you the right information. It's like, okay, you've got to coerce it into giving because it has so much knowledge, and that's kind of like what the prompting is. So when you're using it to style things, do you use it to write like your kind of the low code side of things, like Java? I mean, I'm saying low code and JavaScript in the same sentence, which just seems wrong to me. But
we're blurring the lines here. That's fine.
Yeah, isn't that the point?
Twitching.
Very good.
Yeah. I'll go with it just for the sake of it. Do you also use it to actually do that coding side of things?
I'm using it to build my JavaScript at the moment. So yes, I am. It has more to do with me learning it. I could have my colleague do it pretty much more fast than me, but I am doing it to learn. And it comes to so this is just building a form and validating the inputs, and then turning that into an array and then formatting it as JSON and sending it off with an API. And that's what we're doing. But in terms of styling, I would use other services. I wouldn't use the Copilot in the design studio, just because I know that there are algorithms in the back. There is prompting made in the back that is not fully baked, right? So it's not like it's going off to Dolly and giving you something crazy and creative. It does have a spectrum of things it can draw from, and that base is not really that huge at the moment. So I'm kind of waiting for them to add new things to the layer underneath for us to pick from. So when you ask it to create a new page about mountains, it will create the same layout as if you ask it to create me a page about buses. It will create the same layout. It will be the same rounded corners, the same images, same setup. You just have different text on it. And so I'm waiting for that base of things that it draws from to be bigger, for it to actually make something that I wouldn't think of, but that is better than what I would have made myself. Now I can turn that around and I can go to other AI services and find, make me a new website design that's about mountains, and I will get this stunning graphics that I can then pull off in pieces and implement into my Pages site, right? I can go somewhere and say, create me a stunning color scheme with a logo about mountains, and it will create that for me, and I'll have to apply myself to that creative process. But I will still have to do the work to implement that into the Power Pages site.
Yeah, stunning. That's it just goes and picks from those random images and then just works out what you think is stunning, and maybe not what it thinks is stunning.
Well,
but
maybe you have to make more than one attempt to get it to be what you want. But
So is it just that? Is it just like a set of templates that just uses your prompt to pick from that template and then pick the images and text for that template?
From what I understand, there is a set of pre-made page templates or setups or layouts that it can choose from. It doesn't go off to the wide internet and be creative and find something that you've never seen before. So it is drawing on a set of pre-built things that it applies. And also, whatever you create, you can have it create a stunning form, and it will make a huge CSS styling, and it will apply that to your form, and it will look stunning and modern and good. But that is on that page for that form specifically. Doesn't apply to any other forms on your Power Pages site. So if you go to another page, add another form, that will still look like something from the 90s. So it is inline, it is in that page, it's in that context. You can't make it global. If you want to make it global, you have to know what you're doing. You have to pull that out. You have to make sure that it doesn't go directly to the ID of that form. You have to make it generic so that it applies to all forms. You can do that. Of course you can, but then you have to know what you're doing. So, using that, the designer out of the box at the moment will also kind of lead the user down path that you shouldn't really take if you want to be a good developer and follow best practices on web development, in my view. Yeah. And that goes for something I talked about in my session as well. You can go in there and through the design theming experience in Power Pages today, you can choose 10 different fonts for different things. So your header 1 can have one font, and then you can have a completely different font for header 2, and on and on and on you go. And that's not following any best practices anywhere I've ever seen in terms of design or graphics or anything. And so I asked the product team, can you please limit the number of fonts that we can choose from? Not the array that we can choose from, but how many different fonts we can choose to use. Because we want to guide the user to be better. We want to teach them the best ways, right? Best practices, and be a learning tool more than anything. I would want the Copilot in Power Pages to teach low coders and citizen developers how to be a better web developer. That's what I want it to be. But that's just my personal thing, right? I want you to have learned something and to be better than we were before if you use it. And that
designers all over the world, kind of look at these sites and think, brings tears to people's eyes when they see, like random. It goes back to like using Comic Sans, in your.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, great if you're a primary school, but so one of your blog posts actually is specifically talking about how you manage CSS. So it's kind of good that you talk about CSS. So I'm guessing there's lots of different approaches of managing your CSS. Because if I think about a website, I think about CSS and how are you going to start? Because there's so many different styles like Bootstrap, and there's, all these different ways of managing such a complex area. Maybe you could just do a quick summary of the different approaches and which one you prefer.
Yeah, so you could work with Power Pages and not touch CSS at all, really, if you didn't want to. Because now you can actually make rounded corners and shadows and things just by using the designer. It's become really sophisticated in terms of what you can do. And now Daryl's laughing because he knows that. So it's like you can make... It's exactly what PowerPoint did, right? So suddenly you can make transitions and you can make things swirl and upside and then suddenly all the salespeople out there started to do that, not because it had any purpose or because it's the best way to deliver your content or your message, just because they could. And so that's what you end up with. Yes, just because you can. And so that's what's happening here as well. They're kind of adding on top all these things, and I'm just grating my teeth and pulling my hair because that's not what we need. You don't need them to be able to make shadows and rounded corners, right? Because they'll make it look like something from the 90s.
I love shadows and rounded corners. I don't know what you're talking about. I use them on everything. And swirly transitions, can't get enough of them.
And hot pink neon.
Yeah, hot pink neon. Yeah.
It's making a comeback, I'm sure it is.
So designers all over the world will kind of start, their eyes will water, especially if you start using fonts like Comic Sans serif. Is it Comic Sans?
Comic Sans.
Yeah, the kind of the Joker, the joke kind of cartoony thing like you use in primary schools. But CSS is a key part of all websites. When I think about building websites, I immediately think about HTML and CSS. One of the approaches on your blog post is talking about using something called SASS. But I'm guessing there are lots of different ways of handling CSS in Power Pages. Do you want to run through the different approaches and what you do and what you prefer?
That keeps changing actually with the product. So you could use Power Pages without touching CSS at all, or you can upload your own in the Studio Designer. And then once we had Pax CLI, we were able to download the portal to our local machines. And then obviously when we can use Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio to develop Power Pages into any other websites. And that allowed us also to use what you're calling, would you say, SASS or SCSS that I'm using, to work with CSS in a much more advanced way. So with SCSS or with SASS, you can have functions, you can use variables, you can nest CSS styling inside each other in different selectors. There's so much you can do that you can't really do with standard CSS or out-of-the-box CSS. Now, you have to compile it. It doesn't compile in the browser, so you have to compile it down to one big CSS file and upload that to your Power Pages site. But I found some extensions in Visual Studio Code that will do that for me. So I'm separating my CSS files into different files just to keep it kind of organized. I've also, before they transitioned Power Pages over to version 5 of Bootstrap, we were on version 3.5 for forever. I actually pulled styling from Bootstrap 4, mix-ins and functions, if you will, and actually compile that in my own SCSS and then ran that in my Power Pages site just to steal, because I really wanted to use cards, for instance, from Bootstrap 4, which is not 3.5. So that was a way of me to kind of mitigate that gap between 3.5 and 5. And now that we are up and running on version 5, that's not necessary anymore. And then, to be fair, I just discovered through one of my colleagues that you can now you have the ability to set up variables in CSS, in just basic CSS. So now I'm able to do a lot of the things that I couldn't before. I'm able to do now with just vanilla CSS, if you want. And I'm hating that I love the Visual Studio Code in the browser. When that came around, I was thinking, I'm not going to use this. This is rubbish. Who's gonna code in the browser anyways? And then I find myself using it every single day. And I haven't downloaded a portal with the Pax CLI in forever because it's so easy. Just go into the designer, just hit that button and it opens up in the browser and I see all my files. I can edit it as much as I want. I have IntelliJ. It just works. And I just simply save it and kill the cache, and then you're up and running. I don't have to upload it and So it makes much more rapid development and much easier to get to. And when I can use variables for my colors, then I don't really have to download it and use SCSS anymore. So yeah, that's I'm not sure if I answered your question really, but there are different ways of working with CSS.
Well, you're using VS Code in the browser, and that's it, right? So you're effectively a pro coder if you're using VS Code. I think that's
in dark mode. Ugh.
Yes, in dark mode, exactly. That's the entry level there, right.
That's how you know you're a pro coder, if you're using things in dark mode. You're like, yep, I'm done. My eyes are bleeding. Have to go to dark mode.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I can go back home and I can be a pro coder. Yeah. I really don't know what I identify as. I'm just a program. I'm just solving problems. And if I can use my tool set to do that, then I'm a developer. It's not really something I identify as. And I feel like there's so much pride in the development community and pro coders. I've had this internally as well. I came in here 2 years ago and I introduced Power Platform to these people, and they go, well, I'm not touching that because that is low code and I'm pro code. So no way, I'm not degrading myself to that. No way. And just trying to convince them that this is a development platform as anything. You can be as pro code as you want. It's just that you can start from something. You don't have to build that foundation. You don't have to build all of those things from scratch anymore. You can just click a button and then you're up and running. And to me, right, I'm a web developer. So back in the day, you would have an index.html file or index.php, and I would be at Hello World. Now, I don't even know how I would get to Hello World if I wanted to do a custom web app somewhere. It's just miles and miles of libraries and this and doops and that, and you have to have all these things installed on your computer, and it's blah, blah. And then with Power Pages, I'm just click a button and then it's up and running. It has authentication, it has security, it has Azure in the back. It's what could you want? And then I can run off with that and create whatever interface I want and not having to deal with all of that. So to me, I don't see this as degrading myself as a developer. It's just I don't have to make sure that I know I'm not creating any security issues, or it's kind of enabling me to focus on making a great user experience and a great user interface for people, for the end users. Yeah. And so Microsoft can bother with, and find out, do all the work on security and governance and management, and have all of that.
Well, you said it. Like, we're all just solving problems. We're all trying to just build software. And I think that's what we've always been doing, right from the get-go. Everyone's just been trying to build software with less bugs, more efficiently, using stuff that just makes it easier for us, because no one wants to do it hard over and over and over again. And all of the things you described about Power Pages ticks that box. It gives you the ability to get up and run quickly. You can use templates. You can use the designer to do, rounded corners and hot pink and drop shadows and stuff like that. Or you can then delve down if you want to and do, but it's also metadata driven, with the whole, like you said, about the forms and being able to define those forms from metadata without having to go and code them from the ground up. So all of these things, they're all time saving. So it's all about writing less code. And ultimately, that should be always the message, write less code. And I mentioned WordPress earlier, and I do think that Power Pages ticks more boxes from that, because with WordPress, if you use a template, yes, sure, there's 1,000 million billion templates to choose from. But when you do use those templates, they you can't customize them very easily at all. And often they are so complex, there is no way of customizing them. Whereas with Power Pages, you've always got that kind of code behind that you can kind of delve down into and start to customize if you want to.
Yeah. But the hardest pushback that I get is that they think that you will reach this threshold where you can't go any further. And they're so afraid of that cliff, right? Where you can't go any further and you have to start from scratch. And I've tried to tell them that there is none. There is none. Back in the day when we started that 4-year-old project, when they just bought 8X Studio, the project that I shouldn't have sold to that customer, we created companion apps in blob storage, right? So we had Azure Web Apps, 2 of them companion apps. They were embedded or injected into the Power Pages site, where the out of the box things couldn't cope anymore, couldn't do what we wanted it to do. But for the end user, it had exactly the same user interface, and they wouldn't know any different. So they just thought it was part of the package, right? They didn't know. They didn't feel like this is a completely different interface. Or what are you doing? Where are you taking me? No. It was in the context of the interface that we're already in, and it did its job perfectly. And so we've always been able to do that. Now we are able to do more of that inside of the project. We don't have to move that code out to a companion app if we don't want to, but we can. We can use React with Power Pages. And you were at, after ACDC, Scott, you came to show us at Litera and our pro coders how you can actually use the platform and how you can extend it, how you use it as a development platform for pro coders. And you completely lost me halfway because I don't understand half of the things that you do. It's magic to me at this point. But I can see the light bulbs go off in the heads of the developers that were there. That right, so it's not something where you have to start from scratch. There is no cliff. There is no, there is no limit really, because as soon as you hit something or you have a requirement you can't solve within the package, then you just evolve it, extend it, plug something in, just use something else. And I think that message is what we need to get across to people, that it's a development platform more than anything. You can use the out of the box things if you want, and you don't have to. You can extend it with the tools that you have. And so, yeah, if we could just get that message across. Yeah. What do you think, Daryl?
Well, there's so much going on in my head right now. I can't spit it all out in the time that we have. That's what I think. And there are some podcasts that we have that there's a specific topic in mind, and there's some podcasts where I just enjoy spending time with the person. So you've definitely landed in that latter category. I enjoyed meeting you at Summit for the first time in person and being able to talk to you and then learn from you. I've done zero. Every time I hear anything about, hey, Power Pages or the portal, I just say, all right, where's my Nick friend from Canada? I don't care which one. I'll get one of them, and they can handle that for me. I won't worry about it. So I'm getting a little bit of a glimpse back into what I'm in the actual lowest code of the whole platform. I didn't realize, or the most code of the whole platform, most pro dev. I didn't realize was there. But at the same point in time, I hate CSS. I'm horrible at it, and I don't care whether it's a square or a rounded corner. I don't care, as long as they can click buttons and work. Then fine. That's my. I've done my part of the job. Someone else's job can be to make it pretty. And so yes, I'm feeling some yin and yang between us, which is good. I need some yin to my yang, or some yang to my yang, whatever way it happens to be. So. Yeah. So, is there anything else our listeners would be missing out on that we didn't talk about before we said our goodbyes?
So many things. We could spend hours and hours and hours, I think. We'd never be finished. There's so many things to learn. No, not really. I think I got to say what I wanted to say, and that was pretty much at the end there, where we just need to. It's a platform that enables everyone. To do more with less. And so if you come from a pro code world, then we have something for you. Mm. And if you come from the low code team, we have something for you. So, and I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, if our listeners want to get hold of you and ask you some additional questions, or maybe tell you that AI is horrible and you shouldn't use it, or maybe tell you that AI is great and you should use it, how do our listeners get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn is where I usually get the most messages. So that what I'm used to. I don't check X as often these days, I find. And I'm the only one that's called Ulrikke Akerbæk in the world. And I think I'm the only one that does this. So if you just Google my name, you'll find me. And please send me a message whatever platform you find me at. I usually check all of them within a 6-month radius.
All right. Yeah, well, there's no other Scotts in the world, so that helps Scott a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Well, Scott, do you? I know that's how our listeners can get hold of our guests, and I know our listeners need to get hold of us. But first off, do you want to share your promo code here?
Yes, right. It's so unsubtle now. That's just right in there. The European Power Platform conference is coming up in Brussels, 11th to 13th of June this year. It's going to be fantastic. Lots of great speakers. And Ulrikke, you're actually speaking there as well, with, as you said, with Nick on the the top tips. So definitely recommend going along to see that. So yeah, if you do want to get 10% off a ticket, you can use the promo code ScottDuro which is exclusive for the XrmToolCast. And there is my video, my latest video on YouTube actually has got an opportunity to win a 2-day conference ticket. That's completely for free. If you want to go and head there, we'll put that in the show notes. That does close quite soon, so you have to get there by the end of this week, depending on when this is published. And yeah, it's going to be a great few days, I think. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Ulrikke, to have you here. And I highly recommend everyone go and check out your blog. Some really great content there. And thank you ever so much for coming to the Canadian Power Platform Summit last week. That was great to have you to do the session there. But if you do want to get in contact with us, you can email us, cast@xrmtoolbox.com, or get us on socials @XrmToolCast. And we'd love to hear from you. Any suggestions you'd like to tell us about, any great prompts that you've been using, or any suggestions for guests in the future, or just generally to tell us that you're listening, because we do love to hear that we do have more than the listener that Daryl met at the Canadian Power Platform Summit. So, yeah, thank you so much, Ulrikke. And hopefully we will see you again, maybe have you on again when Power Pages has gone to the next level of its evolution.
Next level.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast. Really enjoyed it. So I'll come on anytime you like.
Awesome.
And I hope to see you in Dublin or in Color Cloud, maybe.
Yes, absolutely. That's the next, isn't it? That's the next. So I'm doing the AI hack with Will Dorrington and Chris Huntingford there. So that's going to be great.
Be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the conference, Color Cloud conference, and perhaps some exciting news coming down the line about a charity challenge. So I'll just leave that there.
All right. And that we will leave our listeners in suspense and say good day. Thank you for joining. Great speaking to both of you again after being in person for a couple of days together. It's kind of sad to be apart, but hey, we get to see our families and talk to each other over the internet. So that's always good too. So anyway, talk to you later, guys. Bye.
Yeah,
cheers then. Bye.
This has been the XrmToolCast with Daryl and Scott Durrell, produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @XrmToolCast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XrmToolCast page.